Okay, so we're gonna start this project with a little bit of E6000 glue and also some air dry clay. So I got my E6000 here. However, I wanna preface this with, if you wanna use like an all-purpose glue, this tacky glue you can get at the Dollar Tree as well. I just want something a little more durable, but I have a lot of confidence that this type of glue would work also. For this part of the project, we are going to take out some clay. And I'm using the back of a cutting mat for this step, just so that the clay doesn't stick to my surface. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna roll it out. I also have the help of a wooden dowel to help me kind of roll out my clay a little bit thinner. So I just wanna go back and forth. Okay, so from here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take an X-Acto blade. I have a really dull X-Acto blade for this. It just really needs to be able to just cut the clay or just separate it. So I'm gonna cut a piece about this thick, and I'm gonna hand roll it out. We want this to be a little bit longer because we're gonna be placing it on our vase. So I'm gonna be measuring it on my vase, but this is the shape that I wanna create. I wanna create like a shape that's kind of like a kind of like a long oval loop. So in order to make sure that this loop stays put, I want to make sure that I add a little bit of adhesive to the back side of it. Now you can do this with like a paintbrush if you'd like. You could add it to the clay yourself if you'd like. I'm gonna add it to my paintbrush, and I'm going to kind of brush it onto the vase directly. And don't worry, we're gonna be covering all of this, so don't worry about making it a little messy. This is purely to make sure that the clay stays put when it dries. And try and keep it nice and smooth. But yeah, just kind of lightly tap it. And it doesn't need to come up immediately to the top. We're actually gonna be adding another layer, but essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna go all the way around the vase doing this exact same thing. We're gonna do another layer below it, and then we're going to let this dry. So now, one thing that I want to mention is that for this top row, you don't need to make this these loops like the exact same length. You can kind of have some variation. I think it's going to look a little more modern if we don't make it exact. So it's okay if your first row kind of dips down a little bit past the partnering loop. Oh goodness, what did I do? But yeah, essentially we're just gonna keep doing this. So stay tuned. We will be back when we get to the next row to add a little bit more personality to this vase. Okay, so now that I have finished this first row, we're gonna focus on doing more of this underneath. So I'm gonna continue to roll out and do the same exact thing that I did for the first row, but just underneath, just to add another layer of dimension to this vase. And I just want to make sure that these lines of clay are as even as possible in terms of thickness. Okay, so now I'm going to put my hand in the vase, and I'm going to kind of figure out where I want this one to go. So it's going to kind of start here. I don't necessarily want these to be as long as the other ones, the other row. So I think I can probably trim this one. And what has been working really well with the tacky glue is I can kind of draw out the shape that I want to create with the glue, which is a little bit easier to do than you would with the E6000. Yeah, just being very delicate with how I place it. Now don't worry about the excess glue. We're gonna be covering all of this up, so if this part is a little messy, that's okay. So one final step we're gonna do is we're gonna take another layer of clay and we're gonna go around the rim of the top of this vase. All right, so we've added this top part, so now we're gonna let it dry overnight and we will come back for the next step. All right, so now that this is all dry, we are going to paint it. Now I am looking for a matte finish for my paint for this, so I'm gonna go with some chalk paint. Now you could do the spray paint version. I would have probably used a spray paint version, but it's really windy out. So I want to make sure that I'm being safe. And I don't want to get it everywhere. So instead we're going to paint it on with actual chalk paint. So you can do whatever works best for you. But we're basically just going to cover the whole vase in white. All right, so now we've added our first coat. We're probably going to be doing a couple coats of this white just to make sure it's completely covered. So the first layer, you know, I don't really worry about the texture or anything like that. I want to make sure I'm just getting a nice first coat on here before, so everything from there will stick. So we're going to let this dry, and we'll be back when it dries. And the nice thing about any sort of acrylic paint is that it usually dries quick. So we will be back. All right, so now that this part has, this first layer has dried, we are going to add some more layers. So really it's just a matter of, I'm using a smaller detailed brush just to like get into the little crevices to make sure I'm covering everything and there aren't any gaps or open spaces. But yeah, we're just gonna completely cover this until the entire vase is completely covered, and then we will stage it in my house. Here is the finished product. I'm really happy with how both these vases turned out. And really they look so similar to the Target version of the vase that I found. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope you feel inspired to try it. Thank you so much for watching Home Talk, and I will see you next time.